welcome back to Phillip Island. We're preparing for today's round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. What a series we've had thus far, with rounds at Amaru Park in Sydney and of course at Simmons Plains in Tasmania. Two different winners, and of course today a new face on pole position. Let's take a look the way they line up on our Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship grid. Tony Longhurst has pole for Benson and Hedges Racing Team with a 1:39.03. Glenn Seton in the Peter Jackson Sierra starting on the outside. Dick Johnson from position number 3 and teammate John BOWE for the Shell Ultra team. Next row comprises of car number 20 Alan Jones in the B&H Sierra, and alongside him Jim Richards in the Nissan Skyline. Out of 7, car number 11 Larry Perkins in the Commodore. From 8 to 05, Peter Brock in the Sierra for Mobile. From 9, 16, Win Percy in the Commodore. Rounding out the 10 is Andrew Madecki in the Mobile 1 Racing Sierra. From 11, car number 9, Greg Hansford, Alan Moffat's ANZ Sierra. From 12.55 is Kevin Waldock. From 13, car number 8, Colin Bond, doing it for Caltex in his Sierra. From position number 14, car number 23, Chris Lambden in the Bow Repair Skyline. From 15.26, Tony Noski. From 16.14, Murray Carter in another Sierra. From 17.15, Johnny Smith in the Toyota Team Supra. From 18 is 12, Ray Lintott in the Valvoline Sierra. From 19.24, Gerald Kay in the Commodore. From 20, car number 46, Lyndon Reithmuller in the Commodore. From position number 21, 32, Steve Reed in the Lansvale Smash Repairs Commodore. From 22, Mark Duquette in the Product Motorsport Commodore. 23 is Ken Matthews in the second of the Caltex Sierras. From 24, Terry Finnegan in the Commodore. 25 is Darrell Hendrick in a Commodore. Full grid here today at Simmons, I've said it again, at Phillip Island. From 26.22, Graham Lusty in the Commodore. 27.45 is Graham Johnson in a Commodore. From position number 28, 19, Phil Ward, the Munro Mercedes-Benz. From 29 is 29, Laurie Nelson in a Mustang. From 30, car number 42, Matt Quacker in a Commodore. From position number 31 is 71, John Faulkner in the Toyota Team Corolla. 32 is Paul Trevethan in the Commodore. From position number 33, 36, Ian Carrick in a BMW. 34 is Dennis Rogers in a Corolla. 35 is David Sala in a Corolla. And there you have it, a full grid of touring cars for round number 3 of the Shell Ultra Series. Queensland's No Baloney Tony Longhurst in the Benson and Hedges Sierra, and starting on the front row with him, young Glenn Seton in the Peter Jackson Sierra Cosworth. Car number 42, Matt Wacker with problems there. The crew member trying to jump under the car, hit lane, but I think we're just about set to go racing. Watch the start, it will be critical. Look for Alan Jones to make a great start from the third line. Jim Richards will go with him, and the 2 Shell Ultra Sierra twins, Johnson and BOWE, rounding out row number 2. Big crowd here today at Phillip Island. The return of touring car racing to the island. We're set for the start. Round number 3 of the Shell Ultra National Touring Car Championship. Who's it going to be, Longhurst or Seton? Away they go. Seton blasts them off the line, and BOWE goes with him on the outside. Johnson slips into third as they sweep down for the run now. Alan Jones getting away to a great start on the outside, but it's Glenn Seton in the Peter Jackson Sierra making a brilliant start from John BOWE. Next is Dick Johnson, and rounding them up on the outside was in fact Alan Jones as they go down to the southern loop. 1 or 2 cars not getting off the line. I think one of may have been the Mustang, but let's have a look at here as Jones up on the inside here, putting some pressure. There's a spin there back in the pack.
Oh, it's Brock, and cars spearing every which way.
So Brock, his race is run. He spins the car around, tries to head back to the pit area, and a cloud of dust down there. One got around sideways, and there's Brock coming out of the mire. And the Mobile team certainly have some work to do by the time that Peter gets back to the pits.
Yeah, pretty severe damage on the back left-hand corner. Glenn Seton, the leader at the moment, and getting a great start.
Dick Johnson moves into second place now in car number 17, the first of the Shell cars, ranging up right behind him. We'll wait to see whether that is in fact Alan Jones or Tony Longhurst back in third place as they head up now towards Lukey Heights. And Glenn Seton promising to do this for so long for the Peter Jackson team. He's doing it comfortably now, and there's Ray Lintott. Bad luck for Ray. First up start in the Valvoline Sierra. Mixed up in that bingle. Car number 12 could have been Ray that in fact wound up in the mess with Peter Brock. But in the meantime, it's Glenn Seton coming off the Nissan turn, down for the completion of the first lap here for round 3 of the Shell Series at Phillip Island. Across the straight, it's Seton, Johnson, next is Longhurst, followed by John BOWE. A great start there from Percy, up into about 4th spot, or 5th spot. Sensational start. Maybe the bingle that we saw back in the pack involving Brock may have taken out some middle markers, and that's where Percy's jumped 1 or 2.
Well, Mark Duque was the other Commodore that we saw involved with Brock in the late part of the incident, and there's the Steve Reed Commodore, the front left severely damaged. So there's been some amazing carnage in this opening lap and a half.
I've hardly seen an incident with the touring cars thus far at Phillip Island. The Brock car is in the pits. Very, very quick pit stop for Brock. Boy, that was a quickie. I thought he took some of the air hoses with him, but he's off and running, rejoins the race. Now that could be rather interesting later in the race, because there is some talk that maybe 1 or 2 of the teams, because of the excessive tyre wear on the touring cars, may be looking at a Grand Prix type pit stop. Seton, Johnson, next is Longhurst, followed by BOWE.
I can't for the life of me work out what's happened in that 2nd or 3rd corner sequence, because with the Nissan is not up amongst them, and some of the Sierras have been spread eagle, and teammate Percy is just doing one heck of a job.
And just past Alan Jones. So Percy in the V8 Commodore, we'll keep an eye on him back in the pack. Here they come through Nissan once again. Glenn Seton, the Peter Jackson Sierra, Dick Johnson, there goes Tony Longhurst, there's John BOWE in car number 18. And just back behind John BOWE, you're not going to believe this, Holden fans, but if you're watching at home, start with the flags. Percy is coming on like gangbusters in the Holden Commodore, is just past Alan Jones. Is up there certainly running in the top 5.
Yeah, position 5, Jones in 6th. The Nissan of Jim Richards in 9th place. So you can see there's a second bunch of cars. Now Wynn's been involved in a bit of aggro here as well, and the front spoiler of the car's come adrift.
And Jonesy zeroes in on the back of Percy, Australia's ex-Formula 1 star. Alan Jones in car number 20, the second of the B&H Sierras. Had bad luck at Phillip Island when he lit the tyres up like you couldn't believe off the starting line, and then paid the penalty for that, but at least came up with the lap record. Race, of course, was full of incidents, with Peter Brock defending Dick Johnson for the latter half of the event. Jones now works on Percy. This is 5th and 6th in the race.
This car that Wynn's driving was bent at right angles on Friday afternoon in practice at about that spot where Wynn is now. No, it's not, I'm looking wrong. It's at the other end of the circuit. And they worked all night Friday night, no sleep at all, the crew of boys, headed by Wal Story, and they've got the thing back together pretty well.
I tell you what is interesting, Dick Johnson was getting a little closer that time to Glenn Seton, but while that was happening, Tony Longhurst came along and really started to make Johnson work hard for it. They come through Nissan turn, working another lap.
Brock fans might be interested to know he's in position 31. Let's go through this field. We've got Seton leading from Dick Johnson, Tony Longhurst pushing in 3rd, then John BOWE, Percy being attacked by Alan Jones on the inside, then Andrew Madecki a fair way back, then Jim Richards, Colin Bond, Greg Hansford, as we take Dunlop race cam and a Dick Johnson eye view of the race leader Glenn Seton.
Some fabulous pictures here from our race cam team as they head through the southern loop now. Dick Johnson carrying the Dunlop race cam, as he will be for the Touring Car Championship. Starts to close it up behind Glenn Seton. Seton has done a lot of testing here at Phillip Island. Just look at Longhurst, the way he just zeroes up on the inside and says, Dick, see ya. That is the move so far of the race, and you saw it on our race cam. Now the cat amongst the pigeons, Longhurst straight down on the inside. You get the feeling that maybe something could happen. No, he's just playing the role of the enforcer.
Dick Johnson's going to get a bonus out of this as well. And I think Glenn's car might have a miss or something. He's just popping a little bit of white or blue smoke there, and it just sounded a little crackly as it came out of Siberia. We'll have a proper listen next time past the commentary point. But Tony Longhurst now the leader. This car on Yokohama tyres, the pole sitter. Dick Johnson in 2nd on Dunlop tyres. Glenn Seton arguing about 3rd at the moment, with John BOWE, who has a look on the inside and makes a very effective move, but he's losing a bit of fuel from the back of that car by the look of it. And then Percy still hanging in there behind Alan Jones.
Oh, it's a great race. coming up to Nissan once again. And now Queensland supporters of Tony Longhurst have a good reason to cheer, because
he's doing some rallycross.
The pole sitter has now taken back the lead. Car number 25 over Johnson, BOWE. Next is Glenn Seton, Jones, then Win Percy.
2.6 seconds covers this first 6 cars.
Then a great scrap back behind them. But at the moment, the real interest in this race is between these 5 cars. Longhurst coming from behind to edge by both Dick Johnson and then, of course, Glenn Seton.
That next bunch was headed by Andrew Madecki with Jim Richards in behind. There's definitely one of the cars in that pack making some ugly sounds.
Yep. Well, at this stage, one would tend to think it was probably Glenn Seton who finds Win Percy underneath him. We'll get that for you shortly as the field exits that turn. There you can see Percy. Still some rallycross there as he's trying to fight by Glenn Seton.
I think he might have got Glenn, but yeah,
yes, he has.
Yeah, Glenn's car's got a shocking miss in it by the sound of it. And then that scrap behind sensational as well, and I think it involves Larry Perkins in the Castrol Commodore. So
yes, we'll have a look at that.
Yeah, there they are. There's another freight train of cars behind. We've got Seton really off the money now. That's very disappointing for the Peter Jackson team. Then we've got Madecki in the second of the mobile cars, although he's the lead car at the moment with Brock in 30th position. Jim Richards behind him. Larry Perkins doing a great job, and he's in the scrap with Colin Bond and Greg Hansford.
Oh, it was Jim. What a move that was.
Oh, and look at Larry down the inside of Andrew. A nice bit of driving. That car's been working very well this weekend. And how good is it to see a Nissan, a Holden and a Ford all having a battle? It's good, it's refreshing.
Sensational. And look at Greg Hansford here in the Alan Moffat ANZ Banking Sierra, coming up on the inside here of Colin Bond, working away at Madecki. And Alan Moffat, of course, has brought over the Swiss tuning expert Rudy Eggenberger for this meeting. Oh, look at Bondi pulling out of the draft there, trying to get down the outside of Greg Hansford.
Look at Larry.
And Larry Perkins going on with it. So
Seton's in the pits.
So Glenn Seton has gone to the pits as Larry Perkins and Jim Richards side by side, and Perkins around the outside of Richards.
Now this is not supposed to be in the script. The Nissan was very strong here on Thursday and Friday, and in theory it should have perhaps a little more horsepower than the Commodore. The Commodore's about 220 odd kilograms heavier. There's Glenn Seton. And I know how he feels.
Yes, you've had a day of that. So Glenn Seton, Cameron, have we got a chance to talk to him?
Yes.
Okay, off you go.
Yes, we can, Mike. Glenn, obviously disappointing. We've got some engine problems here.
Yeah, it's missing up at high revs, sort of from 6,000 on, and that's the way it goes.
After a good start, how do you feel about this? Because obviously it could have been the best result of the championship so far for you.
Well, I'm pretty disappointed. The car was going so well, and I reckon we could really win this race, but mechanical problems bring us down.
Yeah. Just a lot of people are interested in the tyre battle going on out there. What's the track performing like?
Well, the track's pretty good. There's a little bit of oil on a few places, but the track's in good condition. I think it'll be very hard on tyres by the end of the race, but I think Yak Harmers will win the race anyway.
We'll try and get back out?
Yeah, we'll put new plugs in it, and hopefully that's all it was.
Okay, back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Cameron, and thank you to Glenn Seton. There's our race leader, Tony Longhurst of the Gold Coast. Sweeping down through the southern loop in the Benson and Hedges Sierra, 25. Very, very professional team. Oops.
Mark Duque, number 33.
Yes, he's managed to rejoin the fleet as Tony Longhurst comes up on a couple of the slower cars. Distances himself rather well. Johnson still sits on the tail of the number 25 B&H Sierra. Then John BOWE. So the Johnson cars running second and third at this stage. I'll tell you what, the performance of both Win Percy and Larry Perkins has brought this rather large crowd to life here today at Phillip Island. Oh, there's
Jones and John BOWE.
John BOWE. Keeping in mind they had a big heave too at Symonds Plains, where Alan Jones lit up the tyres and got going as Perkins slips by, and so does Jim Richards. So that was a costly exercise, and they got into some real wheel banging before the first turn. And talking to John BOWE, oh, they had two more off, car number 45. It could be, I thought it may have been Larry Perkins.
Yeah, it was almost what I was going to say too, but I don't think so.
45 exits.
I think that's Lester Smoot.
Yes, it is. That's all happening here at Phillip Island, folks. No mistake about that. John BOWE has got back on the racetrack. The man who is separating BOWE and Jones at this stage is Greg Hansford. To the little tiny... Oh,
I thought Larry was going to have to drive in the pit lane then to get round these guys.
Yep. Really, it was such a...
Win Percy is in 3rd position.
Perkins is 4th. Can you believe that, Holden fans? They have sprung from nowhere here today. They made the top 10 yesterday after looking, well, maybe just a little off the pace to the Sierras in the morning session. Came back in the afternoon session to make the top 10. And have they saved their best shot for Phillip Island today? Well, here's our race leader, Tony Longhurst. There's Dick Johnson, the man giving chase. Let's look and see how far back. I don't believe it. Yes, it is. The Commodore of Win Percy. Back at Phillip Island, round 3 of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. Our race leader is, of course, Tony Longhurst in the Benson and Hedges Sierra. And trailing him, of course, is Dick Johnson in car number 17. There's the split. Longhurst up on some of the slower traffic at the moment. We've already seen a few of these slower cars running interference. Certainly not John Faulkner in the Toyota Team Corolla. And he waves Dick Johnson by in car number 17 as they sweep down to Nissan turn. Give us an opportunity shortly to show you the split over the top 10 cars as Longhurst comes through Nissan and works the front straight. There is the gap. Tony Longhurst, car number 25. Dick Johnson's staying in touch with him.
And just you'll see in the background is the Holden Commodore. That's the distance from 1st, 2nd to 3rd. And then there's another battle quite a long way behind all that. Interesting game of tyres going on between these top 2 runners in the Sierras. The suggestion up and down pit lane that was that maybe Tony had favoured a softer tyre for this race and planned a deliberate stop, and we know, we've seen them in the endurance races, the teams are all capable of pretty flash stops, particularly when it's just for tyres here. And that may be a strategy that could work, but it depends on what Dick Johnson has done.
Well, here's the gap now. Longhurst goes through. There's Dick Johnson running in 2nd. About to come into view will be Win Percy. Here comes Win. Holden Special Vehicles Commodore running 3rd at the moment. 4th is the man behind him, obviously John BOWE. Next is Alan Jones. Next is Larry Perkins. Jimmy Richards is the next one through, followed by Greg Hansford. Colin Bond is your next driver. Then Andrew Madecki. Then the Playscape racing car, Kevin Waldock. The BOWE Repairs Nissan Skyline and Murray Carter go through. So that gives you an idea of the gap back over the top 12 cars. And I think while this dice is starting to settle between Tony Longhurst and Dick Johnson, we might have a look at the replay of the start of the race again for you to see that sensational start. Johnson getting closer all the time here. There it is with the Peter Jackson car getting off. And that was the run down to the first corner as we just pick up. Timing's perfect, isn't it, folks? When you think you just don't have a dice going when Longhurst has been able to do it. Johnson slips down on the inside going down the front straight. And Dick Johnson takes Tony Longhurst to capture the lead in round number 3 today at Phillip Island. And as Neil said earlier, this might all come down to tyres. Looks like the Brock car is back in the pits, the 05 car.
We're nearly 20 minutes into this race now too. Dick Johnson, the series leader after 2 rounds with 32 points from John BOWE 27, Jim Richards 24. Peter Brock in the wars today, 4th with 23. And that second stop for Peter has put pay to any chance of him gathering up any points. So a shocking day for Seton and Brock.
Well, I tell you what, Johnson has just opened up like he's hit a nitrous oxide button on Tony Longhurst. Look at this. Longhurst his exit out of that last turn was a little all over the place. So most of the teams this morning talking about the excessive tyre wear, the 10 laps or 12 laps around here was going to be of major concern.
If you actually time the amount of time that a car stays straight on this track. It's still a relatively small ratio against the number of twists and turns, so the tyre is loaded up very heavily for a long period of time, so it gets hot. There's really knocking a lot of tyres around. And Larry Perkins and Jim Richards continue their tremendous battle. Peter Brock's rejoined on the racetrack, incidentally, and he is in 23rd position. And this battle here is for 6th and 7th. Larry Perkins, the Perkins Engineering Castrol Commodore, Jimmy Richards in the Nissan Skyline, and Nissan can look forward to their new car in the not too distant future, having won the most recent round of the Japanese Touring Car Championship in fine style. So that new car that we've profiled before is looking pretty sharp.
I just noticed then the blinker on from Win Percy that time past the pit, so
it's been on for the last few laps. I suspect he's probably just bumped it somewhere. Last probably 3-4 laps that's all been happening. But you notice the gap between Win and these two guys is narrowing slightly, and I just wonder whether or not maybe Win's gone for a slightly softer tyre than these guys. And now Jim Richards comes back on the inside of Larry Perkins, picks up 6th.
He's starting to look a little menacing, is Jimmy Richards, because they are both closing on Win Percy at a rate of knots.
Peter Brock is going to get a... Oh, now I know why they're going to bring Peter Brock into the pits. He's got one of our camera cables on the back. Now, he always wanted to be a TV star.
Oh, dear.
That, I believe, is our camera cable for camera 9, so it'd be a fairly wild ride if you were the cameraman on the end of that, wouldn't it?
It certainly would be. At this stage, it's not worrying Peter Brock. But naturally, it's going to be a little difficult to bring you pictures from the pits if there are any pit stops on, because Peter's got the cable to the camera.
Doing anything to get his head on camera, Brock.
Yep, and his tail by the look of it. So Brocky is back in after another pit stop.
He's been given the, it's like a black flag with an orange disc on it, which says there's something astray with the car, report to the pits. So Peter will do that next time round, no doubt, in this bloody battered-looking vehicle at the moment. If you're a corner marshal, there's a chance he could be lassoed today.
Yes. Yeehaw. So Brocky heads in the direction of the pits. The dice, meantime, in the middle of the pack continues. There's Johnny BOWE, car number 18.
On the road to recovery after his tiff with Alan Jones, and he's now back to 3rd place.
That was an unfortunate coming together with Alan Jones. Jones has tried to make up the ground. They got separate. Oh, dear me. Fine pointing after the event. Almost straight up the back of the Commodore there, Johnny BOWE, who joined us for some commentary earlier today on our opening round of the Australian Drivers' Championship, Formula Holden. Heading up to Lukey Heights. So John, a bit of a lonely chase here. Here's our next driver through. That will be Alan Jones in car number 20, Benson and Hedges Sierra. He got away off the line very, very quickly, but that coming together with John BOWE really did cost them dearly.
24 minutes now down out of this 50-minute encounter. Alan Jones is 10th in the series after 2 rounds. And there's still quite a battle going on behind. And what Win Percy has come to the pits also in the Holden Racing Team Commodore.
We'd show that for you folks, except we've run out of cable.
They're changing front tyres on that car, I can tell you, and they're also changing or pulling off the piece of broken spoiler.
So Jones goes away in car number 20. Then we'll look back. There's a great scrap going on, as you can see. Car number 45, it's been lapped. Now, some of these slower cars are ducking to the left and the right. As Jones tries to get through, there's Jimmy Richards going through. The next, of course, is Colin Bond in the Caltex Sierra, then Greg Hansford in the ANZ car. And car number 2, Richards, on the move, so that the scrap that we saw
There's Brock.
Some work being carried out on the Brock car.
Win Percy's rejoined in 13th place, so that stop was very costly. So Dick Johnson, the leader at the moment. We'll get the gap for you from Johnson to Tony Longhurst is indicating he's going to come to the pits as he went by us that time. 4.08 seconds between Johnson and Longhurst. So we'll keep an eye out for Tony Longhurst next time round. He's certainly waving to the pits quite frantically as Brock rejoins again.
There's Richards coming through on the inside. Colin Bond not too far back behind them.
When your luck goes south, it really goes south, doesn't it?
Yep.
Larry Perkins, I think, is also coming to the pits in his Commodore.
Yes, he's on the way in, so that the great opening stanza from the two Commodores, Perkins and Percy, has now been eroded by pit stops.
He was up as high as, I think, let me see, 4th, and he dropped back to 9th in the most recent couple of laps. Now, this scrap is between Jim Richards and Andrew Madecki. No, Peter Brock. I apologise.
So Brock came out just as that group of cars coming down the straight.
Let's see whether Tony comes in. The car certainly doesn't look too healthy at the moment, not behaving itself too nicely. Sliding around in a few spots that he probably wouldn't like. We'll see whether or not he does come in, or whether he maybe had another problem that he was trying to indicate to the pits.
Well, he's got John BOWE closing like there's no tomorrow. The Shell Ultra team looking like a 1-2 outfit here today. Now, if Tony does go to the pits, as we believe he will be, there he is going in.
Larry Perkins is joined in 13th place.
So Longhurst to the pits. That really does throw all the cards up whether Johnson has gone with the right compound to go the full race distance. And the same with John BOWE.
So I think that moves, what, BOWE to 2nd, Alan Jones to 3rd, Jimmy Richards in 4th, Colin Bond in 5th, Greg Hansford in 6th, Andrew Madecki in 7th. Phew.
That's it, and that's spot on. So there's Dick Johnson, race leader in car number 17. And welcome back to Phillip Island in Victoria for round number 3 of the Australian Touring Car Championship, brought to you by Shell Ultra Unleaded. Why not experience the difference? And of course the race leader here is still Dick Johnson of Queensland, driving the Shell Ultra Sierra. 2nd spot held by teammate John BOWE in the number 18 car. And here is our race leader, making it look ever so easy here today, Phillip Island. Tony Longhurst, as we've already reported, has been in for a quick pit stop, change of tyres. Andrew Madecki the same. But the Johnson Shell team maybe calculated all of this just about right. Coming up on some of the slower cars, weaving his way to the outside as they head up to Nissan turn, brings them back onto the start-finishing straight here at Phillip Island. So he's in great fettle, Dick Johnson, looking for back-to-back wins. The winner of round number 2 at Symonds Plains in Tasmania a few weeks ago. Back in front here today. Murray Carter, car number 14, the privateer who just keeps on keeping on.
7th position at the moment.
Which I think the last time Murray raced here, was it a Ford Custom Line? Driving for President Ford in the Sierra. The long service man of touring car racing in Australia from Victoria, Murray Carter.
Where, well, the leader, Dick Johnson, is 19 laps into this race, or 33 minutes. And he's ahead of John BOWE still. In 3rd place, we've got Alan Jones. 4th place is Jim Richards. Jim Richards getting a little bit closer to Alan Jones too.
There's car number 25, Tony Longhurst. He's completed his pit stop.
And when he came back out, he rejoined in 13th place.
Chris Lambden in the pits in the BOWE Repairs Nissan in for a quick pit stop.
Well, we said there was going to be some pit action. There certainly
Look at this. Car number 2, Jimmy Richards, and car number 20, Alan Jones. Side by side, so Richards said he would be more competitive the longer this race went. He's not too far off the beam.
They've done quite a bit of testing down here, the Nissan team. So moving Jim up to 3rd keeps his championship hopes alive. He's currently the best placed driver other than the 2 Shell drivers in the series after 2 rounds. And he's keeping that average up at the moment for the Fred Gibson operation. Yokohama tyres on the Nissan Skyline. And no shortage of homework, and this is a pretty well balanced, pretty well trimmed car in every respect.
Well, Jim comes out of Nissan turn appropriately and starts to open a gap up on Alan Jones. In fact, has opened it up to about 200 to 250 metres and about half the straight.
Jones is going to go into the pits. He's 2.23 seconds behind Jim after only a couple of turns, and he pointed that he was coming in that time. Brock's making yet another pit stop, and while we're in our last break, Andrew Madecki made a stop as well. I'll try and give you a bit of a reshuffle of the top 10 as soon as I can figure it all out here at the moment. There's Brock.
Said earlier that I think Brocky's made more pit stops than Al Unser in the last Indy 500 today.
Chris Lambden in the BOWE Repairs. Nissan's been in and out. Jim Richards coming up on John Smith here in the
Toyota Supra. Been not a great day for Johnny Smith so far. In this morning's warm-up of the Australian Drivers' Championship Formula Holden, he had an almighty off, and the car is absolutely a write-off. John fortunately was able to walk away uninjured. Time to hobble back to the pits and get ready for this afternoon's touring car duty in the new Toyota Supra. What a great looking car it is. It's getting more competitive with each outing, and they certainly have a good little professional there in Johnny Smith guiding the car through the Shell Series for 1990. Turbo technology certainly playing a big part in today's touring car racing, with both the Ford and of course Nissan, and now Toyota with its Supra. Smith running 14th on the road at the moment.
I can go through a few of the placings just to get a bit of a handle on what's happening here as we look at Dick Johnson, the race leader, with a pretty constant gap between himself and John BOWE. In 3rd place we've got Jim Richards, we've confirmed that. In 4th place was Alan Jones. Now Jones is just coming into the pits at the moment for his stop. He was waving madly the last time down the straight. Behind him we've got Colin Bond as we take a look here at Dunlop Racecam, and Dick Johnson coming up on a couple of the slower class Corollas around a corner called Siberia. A tricky bit of road on this track.
Well, as he exits out of Siberia, we join Dick Johnson, courtesy of Dunlop Racecam. Good afternoon, Dick.
There you go, Mike. Siberia's a long way away, pal. I think you got your flyers crossed there, have you?
Well, someone said earlier it was that warm here that the penguins had taken their dinner suits off.
Yeah, she's a bit hot. I tell you what, the penguins, if you've ever had a look at them, they look like rats. Standing up with a dinner suit on.
I'm not going to touch that with a barge pole, Johnson.
Righto.
Mate, everything looks pretty good. You've played a great waiting game here, and you've got a 1-2 set up. Any problem with tyres?
Well, not at the moment, but I'm just trying to look after them so we don't probably have a bit of a problem later on. Now that's the biggest problem, is being able to just look after what you got.
Well, I think it's obvious to everyone, Dick, that the championship this year is far more competitive. Yet when it comes down to really putting it all together, the Johnson Shell team have been able to do it 2 weeks in a row, 2 races in a row, very, very adequately.
Yeah, we're not there yet, Mike. You know, I'm one of those, I may be a great optimist, but I tell you what.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yes,
I've been there and done that before.
Well, this must seem like a breeze as to where you're bound for next weekend.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a little bit different over there with the good old boys.
So where are you off to, Dick? To Darlington, isn't it?
Yeah, Darlington, the place where it got that famous word, the Darlington stripe. So I hope I don't end up with one.
Well, looks pretty good at this stage. Johnny BOWE settling in behind you. We'll come back and talk to you a little later, let you get back on with the job.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Dick. Dick Johnson, courtesy of our Dunlop Racecam.
Now Alan Jones, who was 4th in car number 20, is rejoined after his pit stop in position 11.
I was just thinking he really has embarked on a bit of motor racing this year, Dick, with not only the Touring Car Championship. It's April 8th, the next round at Winton, but in the meantime he's going to duck across the States, try and run the big race at Darlington, the NASCAR round next weekend, then back to Australia again, and then he heads straight back after Winton.
I think he's probably got one of the busiest programs of any of the drivers in the business at the moment, because he's looking, I think, I had a look the other day, I think it's about 22 odd meetings by the time you take into account all the sprint races in the Touring Car Championship and the longer races later in the year, and his NASCAR commitments. So when you start driving every other weekend, it makes you a pretty busy race driver. Well, the gap is narrowing between Johnson and BOWE, and it's about 1.9 seconds at the moment.
Welcome back to Phillip Island. The man who runs fourth in the third round of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship is Sydney's Colin Bond in the CALTEX CXT Sierra. And fifth, right behind him at this stage, is Greg Hansford in Alan Moffat's ANZ Sierra. There's the split between those two. Keep in mind, Jim Richards is third. Our race leader is still Dick Johnson, and on his bumper is teammate John BOWE. And Bondi has been getting better with every race this year. Still one of Australia's most experienced drivers. 13 years ago, Alan Grice won the last touring car race here. And the year before that, it was Colin Bond, in fact, in a Tirana that won his. I'm sure that Cole knows his way around the place. A little smoother now than I think it was then 14 years ago.
No doubt about that. He's got Greg Hansford behind him at the moment in fifth place in the ANZ Ford Sierra. There's Greg. So that's quite a battle between these two drivers at the moment. And behind them we've got Tony Longhurst in sixth, Murray Carter seventh, Win Percy eighth, Andrew Madecki is ninth, then Larry Perkins in 10th, Alan Jones 11th in car number 20. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the top 11 in the field at the moment, and we're 44 minutes into this 50-minute race. There was a suggestion that maybe Johnson might need to pit because his tyres were well and truly at the end of their life, but he's got a very healthy gap over Jim Richards, and all he really needs to do is just get John to hold station, and they'll have a nice 1-2 form finish, and they've got a very healthy gap over Richo, so I don't think there's any panic there at the moment.
No, the tyres were always going to be crucial to both the B&H team and Dick Johnson's team here today. But to have that break over the rest of the field...
Well, it's massive. I've got the watch going at the moment. I can't see Jim at all, and we're up to 15 seconds already.
And they're going to lose 40-odd seconds in a pit stop just to change rubber.
Well, it's not worth the risk if you're going to, if you get a jam nut or something like that. Let me see. The gap is 27.6 seconds between the two Shell cars and the Nissan, so all you've got to do is back off a couple of seconds a lap, which is going to save your tyres anyway, and we're 45 minutes into this race, so there's only 2 or 3 laps to go.
Well, here we are now with Dick Johnson, race leader in the Shell Ultra High Sierra, and teammate John BOWE playing rear gunner. And there's no way that you're going to see John sweep by on the outside. Dick's leading the point standings at the moment, and John is in second. And that's the way the race will finish, with Jimmy Richards back in third in the Nissan Skyline. Really a pity that the problems that beset a few of the drivers in the opening laps of this race would have closed it up a little bit more, but Johnson's had to fight hard. They haven't given him an easy one this year. I mean, it could be said in the last couple of years he may have got 1 or 2 just a little easier than most. But he's had to fight for every one in season 1990. There's Jimmy Richards in the Nissan Skyline. Always going to be there today, running third at the moment. As Neil said earlier, it certainly keeps his championship hopes alive.
Well, bear in mind they've got a new car coming, and I think it's been delayed by some supply problems. But whenever they do get that car, it's going to boost their chances again. But even if they're not entirely happy with the way it's testing, they've got a very good car at the moment, and no shame in being the best of the rest at the moment behind the Shell team, who just seem to be getting their homework right each and every time they go out.
Well, obviously Tony Longhurst and Alan Jones get so close to it. It must be so frustrating for someone like Frank Gardner and the team.
46.5 minutes down, incidentally.
Because Dick has been setting most of the cars up for to finish in the races and to run 1-2 strongly all day, rather than the mad sprint on Saturday for pole. He's allowed a couple of others to play around with that, and this is the result today. Just conserve a little more, and you've got a 1-2 set up, and that is really going to help their championship hopes. Car number 14, Murray Carter, has decided to bail. A little onboard fire, have we, or electrical fire going in there? And he brings in the President Ford. Things wouldn't be too comfortable in the cockpit there, because Murray's got the door open. Oops.
He was in 8th.
In fact, didn't make the pits, and we have, in fact, I believe a fire under the hood going there.
Sure have. I want to be getting some. Oh hell! Get some extinguishers on that in a real hurry, or get away from it in a big hurry.
Murray's guiding everything. He said, "Give it a squirt there." He knew what he was doing as he headed down the pit lane and pulled it up before entering. So drama in the closing stages of the championship here today at Phillip Island for veteran Murray Carter.
Great job from the Victorian Fire and Rescue Squad to be on the scene within a matter of seconds.
They managed to bring it under control, the entrance to pit lane. In the meantime,
probably saved about $250,000 worth of machinery to some extent there.
Remember Murray last year at Lakeside. I don't think we need any repeats, thank you. Dick Johnson, John BOWE. 1-2 for the Shell team. Time is almost out. Maybe another lap. 50-minute races, all of the rounds of the Touring Car Championship, with the exception of Wanneroo in Western Australia, which is 45 minutes to fit into live television across the eastern states of Australia. So a great result for not only Dick Johnson and the Shell team here today, but also for his associate sponsors, Palmer Tube Mills, and Ross Palmer would be delighted there.
I think it's also a significant win for Dunlop as well, because they came down here and developed a new tyre for this circuit after some testing, because they felt there were some unique problems associated with this track. And on Thursday, by the look on the faces of everybody in this team, you'd have sworn that they got it wrong, as they thought they were in strife, but it's no need to panic. They had it under control.
Keep an eye on the flagman as Dick Johnson and John BOWE streak across the line. This could well be their last lap.
They've just done 49.5 minutes. Give you an idea of where things are at. We've got Johnson and BOWE obviously on top with a massive margin over Jim Richards. Colin Bond's going to streak in for a nice 4th placing from Greg Hansford by the look of it.
It was the hand out the window from Dick. Hang on, boy.
We've got Win Percy tucked in behind Greg Hansford, the first of the Commodores, then Alan Jones and Tony Longhurst, then Larry Perkins and Andrew Madecki. So that gives you an idea of the top, 11 or 12 cars.
They're coming up now, I think, on Brock, is it?
Yep.
Or Andrew Madecki?
On Brock. Hansford's still trying very hard to get Colin Bond, but I think time is against him now. A little less than 1 lap to go, so I think all the dices are virtually settled right at the moment.
So Johnson, protecting tyres that have gone off, has really eased up the pace in the last couple of laps, and he's just cruising to victory here today at Phillip Island. Teammate John BOWE will close it up just a little before checker flag time. They come up and put a lap on the tail enders. Heading up to Lukey Heights. And now the sprint down to the left-hander after the dipper to Nissan Corner. Well, it's been quite a day for the Johnson Shell team as they exit and head down to the left-hander now.
You have to speak volumes for John BOWE here too. Difficult thing to harness your enthusiasm and just sit in there and do this. And also remember, he recovered from the shunt with Alan Jones. Now Andrew Madecki's got some problems there.
Coming out of the last turn and looking straight at the checkered flag. It's out, and Dick Johnson, a 1-2 for the Shell team at Phillip Island this afternoon in the Shell Ultra Sierras. Car number 17, Johnson the winner. John BOWE, his teammate from Devonport in Tasmania, takes second in the 18 car. And of course Jimmy Richards will pick up third in the Nissan Skyline, car number 2. A sensational finish for Johnson, put it all together so well here today. Let's check them out on our Toyota race score. Johnson, the race winner in the Shell Ultra High Sierra. Second to John BOWE of Tasmania. Third goes to Jimmy Richards in the Nissan Skyline. Fourth place, a good finish to Colin Bond in the Caltex Sierra. And rounding out the 5, a tradesman's job from Greg Hansford in the ANZ Sierra.